Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's session. Today, we will talk about some of the global aspects of entrepreneurship that entrepreneurs deal with to take advantage of opportunities that are available beyond their borders, but also for academic research purposes in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and how we can take advantage of international or global entrepreneurship opportunities. So it's a very important topic area, not just for practice, but also for academic insights and further research. When it comes to global aspects of entrepreneurship, we must keep in mind that going global has become an integral part of many companies' marketing strategies over the past few decades. And it's going to become even more important in the years to come because technology is becoming so easily available for the average person all over the globe. We must be in search for the principal strategies that modern small businesses can use for going global as easily as possible. Be mindful of the major barriers to international trade and their impact on the global economy, because sometimes there are uncertainties that we cannot prepare for, but there are uncertainties that we can prepare for when it comes to legality and also trade barriers and tariffs and so on. And finally, we want to take advantage of the modern trade agreements, which will have the greatest influence on foreign trade in the 21st century environment. So the question is, why go global? Well, for small companies around the world, going global is not just a matter of making more profit, but it's also a matter of survival. So it's more than just preference of wanting to be everywhere, all over the globe. You have to go global sometimes in order to survive, because your global competitors will be coming and competing in your neighborhoods. So operating a successful business increasingly requires entrepreneurs to see their companies, the organizations, their products, and their services as global ones. In other words, their firms are becoming global citizens rather than as companies based in a particular nation, city, or region. So going global is an enormous activity for most small businesses that want to survive and thrive. So companies go global for many reasons. Number one, to offset sales declines in the domestic market. When you can no longer gain more market share, the only place you can go is outside of the local borders or the city. And some go global to increase sales and profits. Others go abroad to lower manufacturing costs based on economies of scale. And also, we can benefit from lower product costs when we sell more products to more consumers. We can go global to improve competitive position. In other words, compete with global firms in their neighborhoods before they come to your neighborhood, because eventually they will. We can also raise quality levels by going into foreign markets where different ingredients, different supplies, and maybe a more educated labor force can be available at lower cost. And also, we go global to become more customer-oriented, be as close to the customers as you possibly can so you can serve them more quickly. So going global is not just a preference, but rather an economic necessity. We need to think globally. So becoming a global entrepreneur requires a different mindset. In order for you and I to be successful as entrepreneurs, as researchers in entrepreneurship, we must see our companies from a global perspective and must instill a global culture throughout our companies that permeate everything that our business, our employees, and our stockholders do. Learning to think globally may be the first and most challenging obstacle that an entrepreneur must overcome on the way to becoming a true global business. So we must have the ability to appreciate, to understand, and to respect cultural differences in order for us to be successful in every corner of the globe. Small companies pursue a global presence have many strategies to pursue in their journey of becoming global entrepreneurs. One of the first things that you can do is to create a website where customers can learn about your products and services. They can learn about your company. They can develop trust with you in your organization overall. So creating a website probably is one of the cheapest and most effective ways of having a global presence. You can rely on trade intermediaries to help you take your products and services from where you are to where they need to go. You can create joint ventures. You can have foreign licensing for your products and services. You can have franchising at the international level. You can use counter trading and bartering for expanding abroad. You can export your products abroad, either yourself, or you can use intermediaries to take your products into the retailers outside of your border. You can use importing and outsourcing, establish international locations by opening your own wholly owned foreign subsidiaries. And ultimately, you can become an expat entrepreneur. In other words, you go to a foreign nation, live there, stay there, and do business as you would do back home. In our technology-rich global environment, the fastest, least expensive, and lowest cost strategy option to establish a global presence is to create a website. Establishing an internet presence has become one of the most important ways for many small companies to reach customers outside of your home nation. Let us look at the internet users worldwide. You can see that there are 50% of internet users that live in Asia. So we don't want to ignore a big market like that. Europe makes up about 17% of the internet users, Middle East 3.8%, North America about 8.6%. So if you're an American company only operating in America, think about how many more customers you can get if you have an online presence through a website. Latin American, Caribbean countries make a little over 10% of the internet users. And then Australians in the neighboring region, less than 1%. So with the Africans making 9.4% of the internet users all over the globe. So do expand beyond your national border in order to take advantage of others all over the globe. And the best way to do that is to have a website that promotes, that makes information available to customers on a worldwide basis. So e-commerce is something that everyone must be engaged in one form or another. With a well-designed website, as an entrepreneur, you can extend your reach to customers anywhere in the world without breaking your budget. It's a low-cost way to be global from day one. Nearly 5 billion web users worldwide in today's environment. So that's going to increase in the coming years as more and more poorer nations have access to internet and computers or cell phones that can connect to the internet more easily. So in the US, that's about 320 million people. But again, not a small number of internet users, but nothing compared to the global number of internet users that you can target. So it is very important to think local when creating websites to target customers in each nation based on their language, based on their cultural preferences, and so on. Because global e-commerce retail sales will surpass $5 trillion as we speak in this year or in the coming year, 2004, 2005. So small businesses can obviously take advantage of that to have not only the ability to survive, but also to thrive. So step one of going global is to create a presence on the web. Step two is to rely on trade intermediaries. Although many small businesses handle their foreign sales efforts in-house, another alternative to getting into international markets with a minimum cost and effort is to use trade intermediaries for different products and services. They have expertise that usually we don't have at the beginning when we choose to go abroad. So trade intermediaries are basically made up of domestic agencies that serve as distributors in foreign countries for small companies of all sizes. They make the transition to world markets a little bit faster and easier for small businesses, but it's important to select an intermediary very, very carefully. Using intermediaries for trade is becoming increasingly popular because most small businesses do not have the knowledge, they don't have the resources or the confidence to go global alone, at least not at the beginning. So there are different types of intermediaries. You can have export managing companies called EMCs. You can have export trading companies or ETCs. You can have manufacturing export agents. You can have export merchants. You can have resident buying offices. You can have foreign distributors. So depending on what you're trying to send abroad, you may have a selection of different intermediaries you can choose from, depending on the cost and your speed. For going global, you can have joint ventures with others that you trust. Joint ventures, both domestic and foreign, lower the risk of going global or entering in global markets, especially for small businesses. They also give small businesses more clout in foreign countries because, again, the local partner in a foreign country will have more experience and expertise about the local culture, norms, traditions, laws, and so on. For domestic joint ventures, 2 or more companies form an alliance for the purpose of exporting their goods and services in a foreign environment. On the other hand, for a foreign joint venture, a domestic firm forms an alliance with a company in the foreign location, in the foreign country. Most important ingredient for success in the joint venture is to choose the right partner to make sure you are able to trust him or her to not steal your product, not steal your revenues, and not steal your brand. So honesty and trust will be important ingredients in choosing the right partner. The most important ingredient in the recipe for successful joint ventures is choosing that right partner. So there are some tips that will help an entrepreneur avoid some of the problems that others have experienced. First of all, select a partner that shares the company's values and your standards of conduct with regards to quality, with regards to ethics, with regards to morals, and obeying the law, and so on. Second, define at the outset those important issues that may come up in the coming months and years. Third, understand your partner's reasons and objectives for forming the joint venture with you. Fourth, spell out in writing exactly how the venture will work and where decision-making authority actually lies. Who is the ultimate decider or decision maker? Fifth, you should select a partner with different but compatible skills. Different but compatible skills. So it would be really to your advantage and to their advantage if you bring complementary skills. For example, as an American, I would bring the ability to understand American laws. On the other hand, as a Chinese or Thai partner, you would understand the Chinese language, the Chinese people, the Chinese laws, or the Thai laws and customs, and we can do business by forming a joint venture. Last but not least, prepare a prenuptial agreement in case of divorce. So the possibility is always there that you may choose to go your own way, or they may choose to go their own way. So it's a good idea to have an agreement in advance at the beginning before you form this partnership, so you know exactly what needs to be done and who needs to do what and who owns and what percentage of it. The next strategy for going global is to engage in foreign licensing. Engage in foreign licensing. Rather than sell their products or services directly to customers overseas, some small companies enter foreign markets by licensing businesses in other nations to use their patents, to use their trademarks, to use their copyrights or technology in processes or products in the foreign environment. In return for licensing these assets, the small company collects royalties from the sales of its foreign licenses. So you may get a certain percentage, or you might get a certain amount per transaction. But that agreement is obviously laid out at the outset, at the beginning, in your prenuptial agreement with a firm you're trying to license or licensing. A relatively simple way for even the most inexperienced business owner to extend his or her reach into foreign markets is foreign licensing. So enter markets quickly and easily with virtually no capital investment through licensing. It's ideal for companies whose value lies in their intellectual property. Foreign licensing can minimize the risk by ensuring that proper patents, proper trademarks, and proper copyrights are in place and not violated, not infringed upon. Another possible strategy to go global is to consider international franchising. Over the last several decades, a growing number of franchises have been attracted to international markets to boost sales and profits as the domestic market becomes increasingly saturated with outlets and much tougher to wring growth from. So when you can no longer grow locally, you can choose to go global to increase your sales or just to survive. So what are some of the steps that would be included in international franchising? First of all, identify the country or the countries that are best suited to the franchisor's business concept. Generate leads for potential franchisees. Select quality candidates. Very important, again, to choose the right individuals who will abide by the standards that you have put in place currently. You can also structure the franchise deal. You can have direct franchising, area development, you can have master franchising, all elements that should be included in the contract with regards to international franchising. Another step for going global is to use counter trading and bartering. Counter trading and bartering. Some of these strategies have been used for years. A counter trade is a transaction in which a company selling goods in a foreign country agrees to promote investment and trade in that country. So you're selling your products, but you also agree with them that you will bring back some of their products either to your country or perhaps to a third country where their products are needed. Bartering, on the other hand, is the exchange of goods and services for other goods and services. So instead of money exchanging hands, you're basically exchanging goods and services that you need for what you're giving them. So counter trading suffers numerous drawbacks. Counter trade transactions can be complicated, they can be cumbersome, they can be time consuming. They also increase the chance that a company will get stuck with merchandise that it cannot move, it cannot sell, it cannot maybe take over the border to another country for political reasons. So they can lead to unpleasant surprises concerning the quantity as well as the quality of products that are required in the counter trade. Nonetheless, counter trading offers one major advantage, and that is that sometimes it is the only way to make a sale. So sometimes, if you have no other choices, counter trade is a possible option. Barter transactions require finding a business with complementary needs. but they are much simpler than counter trade transactions. Another possible step for going global is to export your product directly to other countries or use intermediaries to export your products for you. Small and medium-sized companies account for nearly 98% of the 304,000 American businesses that export, but generate just about 1/3 of the US exports. So small companies generate about 1/3 of the US export sales every single year. The key benefits of exporting are that you increase your sales and your profits, and you have more diversified customer base. More diversified customer base or increase in sales and profits. So learning more about exporting and realizing that it is within the realm of possibility for small companies, even very, very small companies that are owned by mama and papa, is one of the first and most important steps in breaking the psychological barrier for exporting. Studies do suggest that small companies that export are stronger and grow markedly faster than those that do not. So ask yourself some questions. Do you have a product or service that has been successful domestically with your own audiences in your own city, in your own country? Do you have an international market plan? Do you have sufficient production capacity to sell to others outside of your country? Do you have sufficient financial resources to back up your sales and contracts? Are you committed to developing export markets? Are you committed to serving foreign customers outside of your nation and outside of your continent? Do you understand the local market abroad? And do you understand the export payment system for collection and also for making payments that you have to pay some employees or suppliers or vendors? So after assessing your export potential, the next step is to create a sound export strategy. Recognize that even the tiniest companies and least experienced entrepreneurs have the potential to export their products or services. Analyze your product or service to the best of your ability to make sure it is useful and it does fill the needs of foreign customers. And analyze your commitment to developing export markets, because they can be very, very lucrative. As you can see on this slide about the length of time small business owners invest before exporting. So it ranges from a few weeks to a few months to a year or more. So the percentages vary. However, the percentage of small business owners that only spend a few weeks before they invest into exporting is the largest. 48% make a decision to export their products very, very quickly. And nowadays, with the presence of e-commerce through a social media presence, or even to your own company website, or even going on Facebook and promoting your product or establishing your name, means other people can reach you. So if that is a possibility, then more and more small businesses can go abroad and establish a global presence fairly quickly. So going abroad is fairly easy. It can be done within a few weeks. American small businesses tend to export products to one or more countries. On this chart, on the slide, you can see that 44% of small businesses in the United States export products to fewer than 5 countries. However, about 18% export to 20 or more countries, and then 16% to about 11 to 20 countries, and about 22% to about 5 to 10 countries. So you don't have to go into multiple countries. The goal is to start with the first country that is most compatible with your current environment. And then you can choose whether you want to go to other nations or not. But break your pattern with the first nation that is the most compatible, and customers are more likely to buy your products as they do at home. So what are some of the steps that entrepreneurs can take for successfully exporting products? Well, first of all, recognize that even the tiniest companies and the least experienced entrepreneurs have the potential to export. Second, analyze your product or services as closely as possible to make sure it meets the needs of foreign customers. Third is to analyze your commitment to developing exporting products. And fourth is to research potential markets and pick your target very, very carefully. Fifth, you need to develop a distribution strategy. Sixth would be to find your customer. You can do this for Americans through the US Department of Commerce or through International Trade Administration. They provide you a list of customers that might have a need for the types of product or services that you're offering. Seventh, find financing for exporting sales. So get sponsors, find some investors who would give you the fund, capital ventures, angel investors, and so on. 8, ship your goods and services to the foreign destination. And finally, and most important, collect your money as quickly as possible. When it comes to payment systems, this is where a letter of credit topic or concept comes in. So how does a letter of credit actually work? A letter of credit is basically an agreement between an exporter's bank and the foreign buyer's bank that guarantees payment to the exporter for a specific shipment of goods. So a letter of credit reduces the financial risk for the exporter by substituting a bank's credit worthiness for that of the purchaser. So how does the letter of credit work? Let's look at a visual here. As you can see from this visual that comes from a Basic Guide to Exporting 10th edition from 2008, on the left side of the screen, you have the seller and the buyer. The buyer in the foreign market agrees to buy the product. The seller agrees to ship the goods if the buyer arranges a letter of credit. So in this case, both the buyer and the seller end up in their banks to establish the letter of credit. So the buyer requests that his bank or her bank grant a letter of credit, which assures exporter payment if he or she presents documents proving the goods were actually shipped. Bank makes out letter of credit to seller and sends it to the seller's bank. This is called the confirming bank. Here is where the seller then ships goods to buyer according to the letter of credit's terms and submits shipping documents to the bank issuing the letter of credit. Finally, the buyer's bank makes a payment to the seller's bank. So this is where the confirmation actually takes place. Confirming bank then pays seller amount specified in the original letter of credit. So it takes a little bit of time to see how it works, but most of the time, once you establish your first sale, then it becomes somewhat automatic and predictable. But obviously at the beginning, it takes a little bit of time for the banks to trust you as a buyer or as a seller before they can make these guarantees. So besides exporting, another strategy for going global is to establish international subsidiary. In establishing international locations or your own wholly owned foreign subsidiary requires funds, requires money, requires having the resources. Small companies that establish international locations can reap significant benefits because they would be in total control of everything, just like they would be in their home market. So having an international location can offer numerous benefits like lower startup costs, lower labor costs, a better understanding of the local customer preferences, a better understanding of the local business practices. So if you have the money, if you have the expertise, you can establish your own international location. Another strategy for going global is to use importing and outsourcing. importing, and outsourcing. In addition to selling their goods in foreign markets, small companies also are able to buy goods from distributors and manufacturers in those foreign markets. Make sure that importing or outsourcing is right for your business. Establish a target cost for your product. Do your research before you leave home. Be sensitive to cultural differences. Do your groundwork in order to be successful at this importing and outsourcing. Protect your company's intellectual property. Select the right manufacturer. Provide an exact model of the product you want manufactured. Stay in constant contact with a manufacturer and try to build a long-term relationship with them. A final strategy for going global is to become an expat entrepreneur yourself. People who take up residence and work in a foreign country are known as expatriates, or commonly known as expats. These expat entrepreneurs keep their citizenship in their home country, but they live and run their businesses on foreign soil in foreign nations outside of their home country or native country. So becoming an expat in a foreign market is another opportunity for you to do business there. Of course, if it becomes very, very successful, perhaps you can bring some of those products back to your home country, which you hopefully are familiarized with already. In summary, there are many strategies you can use to go global. Again, you can create a website and create an automatic global presence. You can rely on trade intermediaries, have joint ventures with the right partners, engage in foreign licensing. You can do international franchising, counter trading and bartering. You can export your products. You can establish international locations on your own. You can use importing and outsourcing, and you can become an expat entrepreneur. Choose whatever makes sense for you and your company to become a global entrepreneur, or at least establish your global presence. So the most important element is to establish thinking about going global and choose a strategy and make a decision in terms of what is the most appropriate for you to go global at this time. Once you do that, know that there are going to be some barriers or impediments to international trade. Governments traditionally have used a variety of barriers to block free trade among nations in an attempt to protect businesses within their own borders. So the policies that politicians implement are usually targeting their own industries. They don't want mama and papa stores to go out of business. They don't want thousands of their own citizens to be unemployed. So therefore, regulations are in place to protect local citizens. So be mindful of that when you go in foreign markets. The benefit of protecting their own companies, however, comes at the expense of foreign businesses, which face limited access to global markets. So know which problems you might face and be ready to mitigate them, to work, obviously, despite them. The impediments or barriers to international trade can range from transportation and shipping costs, to language and cultural barriers, to difficulty locating sales prospects, to foreign regulations, and even American regulations for those who are coming into the United States, and foreign sales not sufficiently being profitable. Be mindful of the fact that they can happen. Remember the Peter's principle. What is possible is likely to happen to you. So if the possibility exists, prepare yourself, prepare your people, do training, hire the right experts, make sure you have a number of resources that you can turn to if you face these barriers. And by doing your homework ahead of time, hopefully you overcome them on a proactive basis. Of course, sometimes the biggest barriers potential exporters face are those at the home market. So domestic barriers can include the attitude that my company is too small to export, we're not ready for that, or lack of information about how to get started. The inability to obtain adequate financing could be another barrier for domestic level when it comes to deciding to export. Domestic barriers are not the only barriers that export-minded entrepreneurs must overcome. Trading nations also erect obstacles to free trade. Two types of international barriers are very, very common, known as tariff and non-tariff. So tariffs are basically taxes that a government imposes on goods and services imported into that country. And in non-tariff barriers, governments try to protect domestic industries by basically limiting the number of products that can be imported into that environment, or maybe zero products can be shipped given a certain period of time. Many nations have lowered the tariffs they impose on products and services brought across their borders, but they rely on other non-tariff structures as protectionist trade barriers like quotas, embargoes, and dumping. Quotas are basically limits on the amount of a product imported into a country. Embargo is a total ban on imports of certain products into the country. And dumping is selling large quantities of a product in a foreign country below cost to gain market share. And there are many anti-dumping policies by various governments, so be mindful of the fact that dumping can be illegal in certain markets and you can get fined or even go to jail if you're accused of such illegal activities. Entrepreneurs who go global quickly discover a number of political issues that they must deal with. Although many American business owners complain of excessive government regulations in the United States, they're often astounded by the onerous web of governmental and legal regulations and barriers they encounter in foreign countries. Sometimes they have to wait months and months in order for their paperwork to be processed. American companies that do business internationally very quickly learn that business practice and regulations in foreign lands can be quite different from those in the United States. So some foreign nations simplify the process to encourage entrepreneurship. Others basically take much longer to process simple paperwork. So simply duplicating the practices that you have in your own country is not going to necessarily work in international markets. So being mindful that foreign markets might require totally different strategies from ones that you're using in your own home country. Perhaps the biggest shock comes in the areas of human resource management, in which international managers quickly discovered that practices common in the US, such as paying overtime and even employee benefits, are somewhat restricted, disfavored, or even forbidding in foreign cultures. So that's why it's so important to have legal experts, human resource experts, finance experts, accounting experts, operations experts that know the local market, and they can give you advice on policies and practices to make sure you're in alignment with the local laws. The culture of a foreign country or a nation can include their beliefs, their values, their views, and their mores or traditions that their inhabitants actually share among themselves as a group or even subgroups. So differences in cultures among nations do create another barrier to international trade that we might face at times. There are political barriers like rules, regulations, and political risk. There are business barriers such as different cost structures and business practices that you might have to deal with as an entrepreneur. And there can be cultural barriers like different languages, different philosophies, traditions, and accepted practices on a day-to-day basis that you and I may not be familiar with. So therefore, living in a foreign environment or hiring local experts could be very, very helpful to your success in foreign markets. So when it comes to international trade agreements, with the fundamental assumption that free trade among nations results in enhanced economic prosperity for all parties involved, the last 50 years actually have witnessed a gradual opening of trade among nations. Whether you look at the Mexican, US, and Canadian agreement, or whether you look at the various agreements in the African continent, European environment, or the Asian or East Asian agreements, all of them are making it easier to trade between different nations. So hundreds of agreements have been negotiated among nations during the last 20, 30 years, with each contributing to free trade around the globe, making things easier for small businesses and large businesses alike. Major agreements reducing barriers to free trade could include World Trade Organization, North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, which impacts us here in the United States, Mexico, and Canadians, and the Dominican Republic or Central America Free Trade Agreements. These are just some examples, or the ASEAN Agreement that many people in East Asia actually are working with or dealing with. Although there are no surefire rules for going global or becoming successful, so small businesses that want to become successful international competitors should observe all the guidelines that experts have recommended that you see in this lecture and others that do recommend. So some of the suggestions that experts have recommended as guidelines for success in international markets is that you do need to take the time to learn before jumping in to the decision of going global. Seek out assistance from professionals. So have a network of people who can coach you, who can mentor you, who can help you when you face obstacles. Make yourself at home in all three of the world's key markets, places like North America, Europe, and Asia, because you have a whole lot of customers that can be your potential buyers and purchasers. Appeal to the similarities in various regions and recognize the differences in local cultures. Develop new products for the world market and learn foreign customs and languages, because that makes it easier to understand your customers' needs and wants and to effectively communicate with them as well. Globalize. In other words, make global decisions about products, markets, and management, and allow local employees to make tactical decisions. So globalize. Recruit and retain multicultural workers in each of your foreign locations. Train employees to think globally, but obviously allow local people to make local decisions. Hire local managers to staff foreign offices and branches. Do whatever seems best, whenever it seems best. Consider using partners and joint ventures to break into foreign markets successfully with the least amount of resources. Evaluate opportunities to become an expat entrepreneur. In summary, global effectiveness requires entrepreneurs to learn about the local market, to seek the assistance of professionals, to recruit and train employees to think globally, to consider using partners and joint ventures, and determine which opportunities best fit your company. Last but not least, always aim to be an ethical entrepreneur, to be an ethical researcher in the field of entrepreneurship. Good luck.